Are you struggling to choose your first production camera or just need help finding the right camera? If so, you've come to the right place. I'm going to cover some of the industry standard cameras, and after years of experience in the industry, I will go over not only the great things about each one of these cameras, but also the downsides of each of these cameras as well. Welcome back to the channel, guys. And if you're new here, my name is Judson. I run a successful production company that generates just a little bit over $60,000 per month, and I use this channel to help others improve their skills by understanding the business aspects and understanding what it takes to run a successful business. That being said, let's dive right into the video. So the first camera I recommend if you guys are getting into the industry is the Sony A7S III. It's actually the camera that I'm filming on right now, and it is one of the best cameras on the market that you can buy for this niche. So before I give my opinion on this camera, I'm first going to go over its features. It has a 12.1 megapixel BSI Cosmo sensor, which is the same sensor used in the Sony FX3 and FX6. It shoots 4K 120 frames per second, which is pretty important in my opinion if you guys are trying to take your business seriously. It also has a wide ISO range of 80 to all the way up to 102,400. This camera performs exceptionally well when it comes to low light. It also has an advanced autofocus system, 5-axis in-body image stabilization, and allows you to use both regular SD cards and Sony's CFast Express cards. So now that we've gone over a majority of its features, I wanted to talk about the real use case of this camera. I have been using this camera ever since it was released. I actually pre-ordered the camera back in 2020, and it has been my go-to camera for YouTube, productions, and just really anything I need to capture when it comes to video. What I like about the Sony A7S III is that it is super light and it's very portable, which allows you to take it from country to country, to shoot. It really does fit in a small camera bag. It's also nice to use this camera when you're not trying to cause a lot of attention because it also looks just like a regular DSLR camera. I also like the flip screen on it, which is super great for if you're shooting yourself or shooting YouTube. And it is a full frame camera, so you'll be able to use full frame lenses on this thing, which really allows you to capture that better depth of field. So moving into my second camera of choice is the Sony FX3. So the Sony FX3 is very similar to the Sony A7S III. It actually has the same sensor and pretty much the same internals, but the body comes from Sony's cinema line, so it comes with a couple of features that just work a bit better when it comes to cinema. It also shoots 4K at up to 120 frames per second, has a full frame 10.2 megapixel R Cosmo sensor. It's also very compact and lightweight, has the advanced autofocus system, 5-axis in-body image stabilization, and the custom buttons and controls are just predicated on it being a cinema camera. So this is actually a camera that I'm looking to upgrade to very soon. And yes, I already have the Sony A7S III, but I want the FX3 just because of the couple of features on it that kind of differentiate it from the A7S III. One of which is the shutter speed, which the FX3 offers. The Sony A7S III doesn't because it's not quite a cinema camera, but it just makes life as a videographer that much easier. The FX3 is really making its stride in the industry right now, and more than half the people that I know in the industry are using this as their main camera. So if you're looking to get into Sony and you still want something small and compact, but you want to step it up to that cinema line, I highly recommend the Sony FX3. So moving into the third camera, we're going to be talking about the Blackmagic Pocket 6K or the Pocket 6K Pro. So this camera is actually significantly cheaper than the Sony cameras, almost half the cost. And yes, it actually shoots 6K. So some of the features of the Blackmagic Pocket 6K is that it comes with a Super 35 sensor. It shoots up to 6K video. It offers Blackmagic RAW, which is Blackmagic's version of RAW video. It has a dual native ISO of up to 25,000, EF lens mount, and then it also shoots up to 4K 60 frames per second. I've used Blackmagic on a lot of shoots before I got my Sony A7S III, and I still use it from time to time today. The big difference about this camera compared to the DSLR from the Sonys is that it doesn't have autofocus, it doesn't have a flip screen, and it's just a little bit heavier and bulkier. The big selling point for the Blackmagic is the image quality that it produces. So it doesn't only just shoot 4K, 6K, but Blackmagic has its own version of RAW called B-RAW, which really allows you to play around with a dynamic range much more than the 10-bit footage that the Sony cameras provide. That being said, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K also does come with some setbacks. The battery life is just absolutely awful. The screen on the back doesn't light up very well. It does not have any sort of autofocus, and it's also not a full frame camera, which means that you'll have to buy Super 35 lenses. Another downside to this camera is that it doesn't work very well with low light at all. So if you're going to be shooting a lot of low light video, I would suggest you probably stick with the Sony cameras. Overall, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K was a great camera for me when I used it, and I still highly recommend it if you guys really care about that overall image more than anything else. But when it comes to ease of use, I would still probably recommend sticking with the Sony cameras. So that leads me to my last and final camera for the video, and that is going to be the Canon R5. So I personally never shot with the Canon R5, so I can only base my opinion off of what others have told me about using the camera. I have a lot of friends in the industry that own the Canon R5. But before we get into the opinions, let's first go over some of the R5's features. So the R5 has a 45 megapixel full frame Cosmos sensor. It shoots up to 8K video. It also shoots 4K video up to 120 frames per second. It has a dual pixel Cosmos autofocus system, in-body image stabilization, high-speed continuous shooting, dual card slots, and also that Canon robust weather sealing. So going into my opinion, the cool thing about the R5 is that it really does pack a punch because it also has a 45 megapixel sensor, which allows you to capture high-end photography as well. So when it comes in terms with the 8K, based on my opinion, based on from what my friends have said, they never really use the 8K feature just because the file sizes are so large. And honestly, in the industry, 8K is really not broken through yet, which means that a lot of your clients are not going to require that you need to shoot in 8K. That all being said, the image quality from the R5 looks absolutely amazing, and I really do love Canon's color science. So now that I've gone over all four of those cameras, I wanted to give my personal opinion and just kind of speak about picking your first camera as a videographer. At the end of the day, a lot of people will tell you that gear doesn't really matter. And in a way, they're actually right. But there's also a big aspect to gear that really comes down to workflow. So besides wanting to provide a great image for your client, you also need to remember that this is a tool that you're going to be using every single day. Not only are you going to be using it every single day, but it's something that you're going to take around with you. You're going to travel with it. You're going to put different lenses on it. You're going to use it for different scenarios. So it's extremely important that your main tool is something that not only produces a great image, but is also something that allows you to control very easily. That all being said, I think that any one of these cameras that you choose to start your production company are going to work great for you, but it really comes down to what you're going to be using it for. So if you're looking for a all-in-one camera that is going to allow you to shoot photography very well and also be able to shoot videography very well, I highly recommend the Canon R5. If you're looking for a camera that has nothing to do with photography, it's only going to be video, and you really only care about the best image possible, but you don't really care about all the features like autofocus or low light capabilities, I'd recommend the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. If you're looking for an all-around great camera that will allow you to shoot some okay pictures, but it's really focused on video, then I would look at the A7S III. And if you're looking for a cinema camera line, but you still want a compact camera, then I recommend the Sony FX3. That all being said, I am well deep into the Sony ecosystem. I have a Sony A7S III, a Sony R5, a FX6, and I'm going to be getting an FX3 later this year. And I also have lots of Sony glass. So it makes the most sense for me to stay with Sony. I'm a big fan of Sony. I have been ever since I bought their A7 III back in 2017 or whenever that was. And I really do believe that they're great cameras and produce a great image. But if I were in your shoes starting a production company today and I was looking for a camera to start, the only thing I will say, and this is extremely important, is that I understand that we're all dealing with different budget constraints. But if this is something that you want to take seriously and it's something that you're 100% going to run full force into, even if you have to take some sort of loan to get a real legitimate camera, I highly recommend it. Why? Because you're going to make the money back by having a nicer camera. All four of these cameras are not cheap. They are expensive setups, but they really do allow you to kind of distinguish yourself or separate yourself from somebody who's shooting on one of these things, or even shooting on a smaller super 35, or just kind of a smaller lower end camera. This is really that big jump where people are going to see a big difference in what you're shooting on. And even when I was getting started, I realized that very quickly on. So I did whatever it took to get into a higher end camera. Hopefully through this video, I gave you guys a little bit of the features and kind of gave you my opinion about these 4 cameras that really allow you to get into the video production, content creation world. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm always happy to answer your questions and help any way I can. And if you guys enjoyed the video or got some sort of value, please make sure to hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel for more tips. And as always, guys, peace out.